Welcome to this episode of the Houndsman XP Podcast. This is a bonus edition. It's coming out on a Friday, and it's right on the heels of our trip to Nashville, Tennessee for the Safari Club International Convention. We've got a man by the name of Bob Newland, who is going to be our guest on this podcast. Bob is the president of the Lehigh Valley chapter of Safari Club International. He's hunted all over the world. He's hunted a lot in the United States as well. He's an author. He wrote a book called Following Footsteps. Thanks, Dad, for making me a hunter. And you can find that book on Amazon by searching Following Footsteps by Bob Newland. We cover all that in the podcast. But Bob is not a houndsman. He doesn't identify as a houndsman, but he has a very high respect for houndsmen. And the way I got to meet Bob was very unique. We were on the floor of the show. He has worked with Wade Hollerman in the past, and Wade has done some stuff for the SCI chapter out there, been out there for the banquet, I guess. I'm not exactly sure. I think that's what I was told. But anyway, Bob was looking for a way to support Initiative 91 in Colorado, and we're working on that. But through the conversation with Bob, I found out that this guy had a very good story about being a hunter and the influence his dad had on his life. And he had a very unique perspective and some preconceived ideas about hound hunting until he went on his first lion hunt. And Bob tells us the story, and it's just a great story. I'm so glad that we can find people who aren't houndsmen, but help us carry the message out to the masses and debunk some of these theories about, it's easy, it's not fair chase, hunting with dogs gives you an unfair advantage. Bob is going to dispel all of those rumors in this podcast. I can't wait for you to hear this one. All right, before we get to the podcast, I've got to give you this alert. Alert. After March 1st, this feed, if you're listening through Sportsman's Empire, you will no longer be able to listen here, okay? What I need for you to do before you listen to any more of this podcast is to stop it. I need you to go to your podcast app. If it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whatever, I want you to treat that search bar up at the top like a search engine. And I want you to type in Xtreme Performance Outdoor Network. And that Xtreme Performance is spelled with an X. Xtreme, Performance Outdoor Network. You will see our own network pop up. You're going to see all of the shows pop up. You're going to see the Houndsman XP Podcast, The Journey, The Dogmen, all mixed up. All the shows that we have to offer are going to auto-populate. It's going to be like Google. You're going to do a Google search in your podcast app. So just think of it as Google. Go in your podcast app, search Xtreme Performance Outdoors, and pick up the new feed. After March 1st, if you're listening on the old feed, this one is not going to exist anymore. There will be no new material here. I want to thank Dan Johnson and Sportsman's Empire for helping us all these years of building this podcast. I want to thank all of you who have supported us all these years by listening to our podcast. And man, we got a great future ahead of us. We're going to be adding some shows on the new network coming up in the very near future. So a lot more opportunities for you to hear the things that you love to listen to. The new network and the way we've got it set up now is you can choose which podcast you want to follow. If you don't want to listen to me every week, then don't. If you want to listen to Heath every week, you can subscribe to his podcast, and you can listen to The Journey every week and just pick it up wherever. Now, if you subscribe to the Xtreme Performance Outdoor Network, then all of the shows will auto-populate just like they always have. It's going to be a real easy adjustment for you to keep up with the number one podcast talking about the things we love, hunting and hunting with hounds. The Houndsman XP Podcast is underway. This is a box shaker. Let's get the tailgate down. It's time to dump the box. The Houndsman XP Podcast is fueled by Joy Dog Food. Joy Dog Food has a rich tradition of supporting the Houndsmen of America. Founded in 1945, Joy is proud of its history and the relationship it has built with the American Houndsman. And in 76 years, there's never been a recall. Made with 100% American-made high-quality ingredients, Joy Dog Food has one of the highest calorie-dense formulas on the market. For 76 years, this made-in-America product has kept hunting dogs in the field day after day, season after season. And when we say made in America, Joy has a long track record of fighting for American freedoms by being on the front lines against the animal rights movement and their extremist tactics. Joy will fuel your hounds and fight for your freedoms, fueled by Joy.
You better burn that.
We'll cut that first part out, I guarantee it. Oh, yeah. So last week or a couple weeks ago, I got the opportunity to go to the Safari Club International Convention in Nashville, Tennessee. And, this is just another one of those contacts I made. It was very unassuming. And we were actually at Wade Hollerman's booth. And I think I got summoned to the booth actually to come over and talk to this gentleman. And I'm honored to have Bob Newland, who is the president of Safari Club International chapter in Lehigh, Pennsylvania, the Lehigh chapter. Is that
Lehigh
accurate?
Valley. Lehigh Valley.
I didn't say Valley because I thought that might be. I know there's a big muzzleloader. That's a very traditional type area. And when I was shooting muzzleloading rifles and stuff, Lehigh Valley has a whole flintlock culture there too.
It does. You're right. Yeah. I've heard that before.
Yeah. It's Pennsylvania, I think, is about the only state left in the union that has flintlock only traditional muzzleloading season.
I know they have one. I don't know if they're the only state or not, but I know they have one.
I'm pretty sure they are. Well, Bob, welcome to the podcast. I was really excited to talk to you. We started talking about, the funny thing is, this is why Safari Club International is so important. You being a chapter president, you were looking for an opportunity to do an auction item at your upcoming banquet for SCI. And then as we're talking, I find out that you've got a really cool story I was wanting to tap into.
Okay.
And kind of set this up before we get to it. I always like getting people on here that aren't necessarily houndsmen, but I like getting your perspective on what it's like to hunt with hounds and different things like that. And you wrote a book about your hunting life called Following Footsteps. And I just want to dive into all of it. So let's start out with your involvement with Safari Club International. As a chapter president, what kind of things are you bringing to your local community there with SCI?
All right. Well, I joined. I'll start at the beginning. I took my first trip to South Africa about it was 9 or 10 years ago. My wife and I went on our first safari, our first international hunt. And we came back, and it was about 6 months later, I got an invitation in the mail to the Lehigh Valley chapter's banquet that they hold every March. And I had really no experience at all with SCI before that, but decided, let's go and check it out, see what it's all about. And I was just blown away by the camaraderie and just being in the room with 300 people that all shared the same passions that I have for hunting and that sort of thing. And so I made a decision I wanted to get more involved. And the next year came around and we went to the banquet again, and I was invited to sit at the board of directors table. Why, I don't know, but they something I said to them, I guess they liked. So I
like this guy's an easy mark. We could probably get some work out of him.
Probably. Yeah, you're probably right. Yeah. Yeah, so I sat at their table, and shortly after that, I made application to the board and joined the board. And I spent 6 years on the board being their auction chairman, where I was responsible for doing exactly what you saw me doing, talking to people like Wade to try to get donations for the chapter, where we can auction these items off and raise some money for conservation and hunter advocacy. And we have a huge youth activities program. We have a big veterans program, and the money that we raise at this auction is what supports all of that. So I'm in my 3rd year now as chapter president. Never had any aspiration to be president, but just one of those things kind of fell into place. And I got to say, it's been one of the most rewarding things I've done in my life. Has been representing this chapter, because it is a great group of people that do an awful lot, and we are one of the more active chapters. So, like I said, we raise money for veterans, for the youth, to try to keep the youth involved and the future of our sport. Right? It hinges on the youth. So if we don't get them out experiencing the outdoors and away from their iPads and their phones, I have a real concern about the future of hunting. So those are some of the things that we're involved in. Yeah,
that's there's a lot to digest right there. I don't think we can even break down everything that SCI does in just a short podcast and talk about anything else. Yeah. I think the community chapter model, it's certainly not exclusive to SCI, National Wild Turkey, Ducks Unlimited, all those sort of stuff. But, for me, that local chapter management business model type thing is very valuable, because it brings the organization down to the grassroots level. It's guys can find the value of belonging to a bigger organization. Maybe they're never going to be able to go to South Africa or, to Spain or wherever to hunt the ibex I see behind you there. But, they can still find a place where they can be involved and work for the benefit of hunting and the future of hunting. Sure.
Our chapter in particular is very active in helping to get the Sunday hunting approved in Pennsylvania. There was no hunting allowed in Pennsylvania on Sundays. Now they're making progress with that. We had success in New Jersey helping to get the black bear hunt back opened up again. So that's the advantage of the local chapters. I mean, the national organization does tremendous things too, but on a local level, we're able to stay more, I think, in touch with these issues that are affecting the everyday person that hunts in Pennsylvania or New Jersey. Yeah.
Can you just kind of break it down a little bit for us? The difference between the mission of the local chapter versus the overarching international mission of the do you call it the international chapter?
Just national.
The organization, yeah.
Okay. I don't know that our mission is much different. I think the mission of them would probably be very similar, identical. I think it's just that obviously we have a vested interest in what's going on locally. So we're more in tune and more apt to pick up on that stuff because we live here, right? So we pick up on what's going on a local level, and we direct our attention to that. But that doesn't say we don't direct our attention on a national level. Also, the purpose for me talking to Wade Holliman was asking him, for a donation. I wanted to earmark that donation and send that money to this Save the Hunt program to fight this legislation that's coming up about banning mountain lion hunting and bobcat hunting. And, I want to make sure that we're doing our part to fight that battle as well.
Right.
That's how I was introduced to you.
Yeah, it was, we just had a strategy meeting on that. And one of the things that Dan Gates reported on was the groundswell from the chapters of Safari Club International and how much support they're throwing at this. And we've talked about it. I'm sure my listeners are thinking, oh, here we go again. We're talking about Initiative 91, but daggone it, man, if we got to decide where we're going to drive the stake in the ground. and what line we're not going to allow people to cross. And I think our community is ready for that. They're ready. They're fed up with getting unreasonable policies and emotional based, science based, or ballot box biology shoved down their throat. And we're also recognizing that, man, if we allow it to happen here, then it can come here. It's like a disease. It'll just spread.
Yeah. That's what struck me most when it was brought up to us at the board meeting at National. That's what struck me the most is the potential for this to spread into other states and start affecting things in other states as well. So it's important that we fight these battles as they come up. For sure.
Yeah. Well, as the president of a local chapter, why should a guy like me, a houndsman, I've never hunted internationally, why would a guy like me want to join or need to join a local SCI chapter? Like I said, I'm a member of the national organization, but I'm not involved or specifically a member of any local chapter.
Well, I'll get you an application then.
It'd be a little far for me to get to the meetings from here, but I know there is a Northern Kentucky chapter.
Yeah. Well, I think for me, the two biggest things are what I already mentioned there and touched on there is that feel for what's going on a local level and having that battle fought here on a local level and not just on a national level. I like to have some influence on what's going on locally more than just the national organization does. That's the first piece of it. But the second piece of it is I enjoy the camaraderie of it. I really do. I enjoy getting together with all these like-minded hunters and conservation-oriented people that share ideas and just share stories and just sit down and have a beer together and chew the fat kind of thing. So for me, that makes it it's like your local gun club that you might belong to, or that you spend time with these. I enjoy spending time with these people, so that's a big part of it too.
Right.
And I feel like I'm giving back, and it's easier to give back on a local level than it is on a national level, where it involves traveling all over the country.
Not only that, but I think you feel like you're pushing this money up the chain, and you don't really see the work locally, and it can be a little bit discouraging when that sort of a thing happens. So. Yeah. So I wanted to ask you this. I think over the years, I'll just talk from my personal experience. I always kind of felt like that the SCI was kind of above my pay grade. It was kind of out of reach for me. When I started dealing with SCI and talking to the leadership, and then when I got to the convention this year, this was the first convention I attended, I found out real quick that these guys are just hunters.
Yeah. Safari Club has this image of they're called the good old boys club, and I think they hear that word safari in the middle of the name, and it makes people automatically think about elaborate African safaris. But that's
I think I needed a gold engraved side-by-side rifle and wear khaki shorts and stuff like that. And I guess what I'm trying to do here is set up and tell people it's like, man, this is a great organization. And if you haven't looked into it, it's not beyond your reach. First for hunters, first for hunting. I saw that all over, or what is it? First for hunters, first for wildlife.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Those two things seem to be the driving principle, and it's really just hunters.
Yeah. Certainly, there's a lot of issues that take place on the international, scene with importing, animals and things like that from other countries. So, there's a lot that goes into fighting those battles too. But there's a lot that's going on fighting the battles just here in the United States as well. In Alaska, in Colorado, in Jersey, Pennsylvania, all over the country. Louisiana with the black bear hunt. Right. Yeah, SCI is involved in all that, and that's grassroots kind of hunting. That your everyday guy is doing. So.
Yeah, a lot of times you see stuff pop up about the import of leopards from sure. Africa, and people think, well, I'll never hunt a leopard. Right. But when we're talking international, you're talking about importing, going to Mexico and hunting a mountain lion and trying to get it back to the States. You're talking about going to Canada and hunting a bobcat or a black bear or whatever, and trying to get that wildlife back to the state. And SCI is on the cutting edge, the tip of the spear for fighting those and making sure that hunters retain their freedoms to go international to hunt. Because all those things, if you allow it to take hold there, state governments follow federal government. Some of it's because of funding, some of it's because political pressure, threats of losing state funding, things like that. Hey, if you want to continue to do this, you need to back us on the international import deal, blah, blah, blah. And then before you know it, you can't transport a black bear from Virginia to Indiana. So,
yeah, very true. Yeah, international isn't all just about Africa. Safaris, like you said, it's Mexico and Canada too, which, driving across the border to hunt black bear in Canada is not that expensive of a hunt. It's not something that, is out of people's reach.
Right. Yep. For sure. Yeah. For sure. One of the things that I wanted to talk to you about for sure was this book that you wrote, Following Footsteps. I want to get into your history of hunting.
Okay.
And how you dedicated, and we'll ultimately get to the story that you dedicated a whole chapter to, and we'll break that down too.
All right.
So tell us about Following Footsteps.
So I had the great fortune of being born into a family of hunters and fishermen that lived the outdoor lifestyle. My father, my grandfather, my uncles, everybody enjoyed the outdoors. And so the opening chapters of my book talk about how I grew up at age of 4. I was out on my father's fishing boat with him and his father, out on the ocean fishing. And, they would joke that I could walk on water before I could walk on dry land, so, but then
probably to your grandpa, you probably could.
Yeah. Yeah.
Probably your grandmother, I would say. Yeah.
But I lost my dad at a very young age. He was only 41 when he passed. And, it had a dramatic effect on my life and caused me to, pull away from the things that I used to do because honestly, it just wasn't the same anymore. And then I got to a point where I had my own children and I wanted them to experience that outdoor lifestyle too. So that pulled me back into hunting and fishing. And it was that first trip to Africa with my wife that got me hooked on international travel and doing some of that as well. And so Following Footsteps.
Can I jump in here and ask you a question?
Yeah, shoot.
So at what age, how old were you when you took a break from hunting, and how old were you when you decided to get back into it?
I was 18 when my father died.
Okay.
And I started hunting again probably around 23.
Okay.
In that age. It wasn't decades, but it was just a break,
right.
Sitting in a deer stand by myself at that point, it wasn't enjoyable for a while.
Yeah, you needed to just digest the situation and I get it.
But time heals everything, and you move on, right? And so I wrote the book for a couple of reasons. I wanted to pay tribute to my father and my grandfather, and I wanted to establish something that down the road, my children and their children and their children's children would know me and what I did. Yeah. And so it was like a legacy. Mm-hmm. And it's a little emotional topic for me still. So.
Sure. Well, I won't be like Barbara Walters and just see if I can get you to cry on camera.
Thanks. I appreciate that.
That's not the goal here.
Yeah.
So what sort of things are in the book? I won't ask you to divulge, things.
Nah.
Yeah.
The book's been out a couple of years already. There's a couple chapters devoted to conservation and local New Jersey hunting, whitetails in Jersey. And then there's chapters devoted to different adventures that I've gone on around the world. I've been fortunate that I've been able to do some traveling, and I'm fortunate that I married a woman who enjoys coming along with me. She's not so keen on shooting herself, killing animals herself, but she enjoys coming with me and walking along while we're, on safari or on a hunting trip someplace. So, we've done New Zealand together, and we've done Africa a couple times now, and Spain. So there's chapters devoted to each of those hunting trips. And I said there's a chapter devoted to conservation and hunting's role in conservation, and how important hunting is to conservation, and the money that's raised through hunting funding conservation. That's a big part of it. And then I also incorporated some things in there about the humanitarian stuff that we try to do when we're on these hunting trips, feeding the hungry and providing school supplies and stuff like that for underprivileged children while we're on the adventures. So
well, let me ask you, since you've engaged in both sides of that, not only the hunting but the humanitarian side too. We often hear the message about the value of wildlife in Africa, and how the local economy is very dependent on the hunting industry in Africa, and especially South Africa.
Sure.
Can you speak a little bit about that? Some of your experience?
Sure. Well, one of the keys to it is that hunting gives the wildlife in Africa value. So the farmers, who are in competition with the wildlife for grazing, they're willing to tolerate the animals there a little bit better if they know that brings them a stream of revenue, because some hunter is willing to pay to come over and hunt that Inyala. So, okay, maybe I'll tolerate him in my fields, competing with my cattle for grazing, because I know that there's some income that's going to be derived from that. So hunting directly gives value to the animals that are over there. So they're protected. They're not, there's a big anti-poaching, force that goes into protecting that wildlife that's over there. And like I said, the farmers are willing to tolerate it more too, because there's income coming from it. That's key. The other piece of it is how many people are employed by these hunting lodges in Africa. There's housekeeping people, there's trackers, there's skinners, there's cooks, there's groundskeepers. There's a tremendous amount of employment provided by these hunting lodges in Africa, and that's funded through hunting dollars. So yes, Africa depends on the revenue that comes in from hunting.
One of the things that you brought up that kind of tie it all together a little bit, I want to dive a little deeper, is the explanation of putting that value on the wildlife. From my research, and I've had Ivan Carter on here, Gavin Lippius grew up in South Africa. I've got friends in Africa who are houndsmen. I talk to them regularly. And, the thing that ties it all together is, if you take out the hunting aspect of it, not only is it going to hurt the economy, it's going to hurt the wildlife, because your typical farmer is there. He's got to make a living. So you remove the value from the wildlife, and now there's no reason for him to tolerate that wildlife anymore. So when people try to get this message out here that hunting is harmful to wildlife, it's just simply not true. And I don't think there's any place that is more evident than in Africa, because those people are like, I can make money off this cow if he's grazing here, or I can make money off of this honey, and maybe I can do both. But you take the value off of one or the other, then one of the biggest things that I've seen, the biggest threats, is the what do they call it? They call it the herdsmen that drive cattle down into the national parks and different things that are just overgrazing it. There are actually game rangers and stuff that are in pursuit of these people. They're like the reverse of rustlers. They're herdsmen that are outlaw herdsmen that drive their cattle around different places for grass, and they're actually in the national park system, and they're always chasing them out of there.
I'm not familiar with that, honestly.
I'll send you a link to that. That was really cool. Is it actually a documentary I watched? It was really interesting. Again, it put another spin on it and helped me understand.
Sure.
What the value is and what the war is really about sometimes on some of this stuff.
You said exactly what I was trying to say. You just did it more eloquently.
I don't know about that. The other humanitarian, you said you help feed school kids and
yeah. Well, that's part of Safari Club International. Also, they have what's called the Blue Bag Program. They're large blue duffel bags. You might have seen pictures of them. They send thousands of them over there. So you can request them from Safari Club, and they'll send them to you for free to your home. And they always fill one of those with some stuff to take over there to give to the kids. So it can be like soccer balls, school tablets, colored pencils and pens, flip flops for their feet, and any kind of little stuff that they can put in that bag and send it to you. There were ball caps in there and T-shirts and those nylon backpack type of things. So they sent us 2 of them, and we take them over with us. And it's much cheaper to buy things over there than it is to buy it here and bring it with you. So we go to their local store over there once we get off the airport. The guides are always willing to stop and let you shop. Mm-hmm. And we fill those duffel bags up with school supplies and clothing items and candy and gum and, toothbrushes and eyeglasses and whatever we can think of.
You buy them candy and toothbrushes.
Yeah, exactly. Right. You're going to give them candy. You got to make sure they can clean their teeth. Yeah. So, and we fill those duffel bags up. Then we always manage to get some of the game meat that we've taken in on our hunt, and we'll bring the meat over there with the duffel bags. They'll take us to we've been to orphanages, we've been to schools, foster homes, and if you see how neglected these kids are, and you bring this stuff in. I've got a video of my wife and I and the children opening up the duffel bags and passing out all of this stuff to them. It'll bring a tear to your eye. They are so happy, to have it and receive it. And a lot of times they don't get protein if it's not for us, the hunters bringing that meat over to them. They're eating corn maize most of the time, and so that protein that they're getting from those game animals goes a long way to feeding them. And it's something that we've done every time we've gone over there, and we always will. It's the one of the most rewarding experiences you'd ever have.
Yeah. So getting back to the book here, Following Footsteps, there was the thing that really sparked my interest that got us talking was the one chapter. Mm-hmm. And this is the part where I always like getting the thoughts and opinions of people who aren't houndsmen. For a houndsman, I've been hunting mountain lions, not seriously, just simply because where I lived. If I lived there, it'd be a whole different story. But almost annually since 1993, and all that time, I've only taken one mountain lion. I've only shot one mountain lion. For the houndsman, for me, it's the dog work. It's taking. It might be a breeding pair that I put together to produce a pup that is going to result in 3 years to be a hound that I can go catch a lion with, or a bear, or a raccoon, or whatever. Mm-hmm. And so the training, the dogs, the breeding, the science behind all of it, the craft is what draws me to it. And so the hunt in and of itself for me is completely different. And sometimes I get lost in that. And it's always refreshing to hear somebody who's not a houndsman and see their perspective and hear their experiences. And the worst thing for me, and I've taken several people, the worst thing for me is to take somebody who's never gone that says, I just want to kill a bear, or I just want to kill a lion. And I like for it to suck for them a little bit. I like for it I like for them to earn it. The worst thing is to have a slam dunk. But I tell those people, it's like, the reason it looks so easy is because Wade Hollerman made it look easy. Hunter Meekum, the Whitaker brothers, those guys make it look easy. You don't see all of the years of prep and all that stuff behind it. So when I get a person who's willing to share their experience from the non-houndsman side and then talk about it and then write about it in a book, man, that's gold. So let's talk about your mountain lion hunting experience.
All right. So I might get long-winded on this. If I'm talking too much, cut me off. I
got long-winded setting it up.
So the chapter you're referring to is called Gramps' Gun. And I always kind of viewed hunting bear or mountain lion, with dogs as kind of almost, I don't want to say I thought it was unethical, but I just didn't feel like it was necessarily fair to the animal. That was my initial concept of the whole thing.
You're carrying the ball in the right direction here, Bob. Yeah.
I'm sorry, say that again.
I said you're carrying the ball in the right direction. This is why I wanted to talk to you.
All right. So yeah. So I thought, well, I got to do something to make this more challenging than just going up there and shooting. So I thought I would do the hunt with my bow and arrow, at least make it an archery hunt, little extra challenge to the process. I booked my hunt, and I booked it it was late in the mountain lion season. There was no snow on the ground anymore. It was dry dirt hunt. We were in the Book Cliff Mountains, and we spent 5 or 6 days on mules riding up and down the Book Cliff Mountains. Oh my God, we rode, my rear end was sore for a month. We ran a couple of cats. Yeah, we ran a couple of cats, but we either ran out of daylight or they got onto an Indian reservation where we could go in. And I spent 5, 6 days there and had nothing to show for it. Didn't even, but let back up a second. I was going to do it archery. My grandfather gave me his lever action 30-30, his Marlin, before he passed away. And I had it in my gun safe for years. And I always thought I'd like to shoot something with that animal, with that gun, just to kind of pay tribute to my grandfather and build on that connection a little bit, I guess.
Sure.
And so I abandoned the archery idea, and I said, this is the perfect opportunity to use the 30-30. It's not a rifle that I really would use for much else. So it was a good opportunity to use it.
So you took the rifle with you on the first hunt?
I did. I took the rifle with me. Yeah. And it rode in the scabbard of that mule, for all those days and never got pulled out once. I brought it home with me. And I talked to the outfitter, and I rescheduled for the following year to give it another try. And I said, but I'd like to come earlier in the season. Maybe we get some snow on the ground. So we set it up, and I went back the second year, and I spent 5 or 6 more days.
Can I ask some questions about the first hunt?
Yeah, go right ahead.
I just kind of want to pick your brain and maybe get some deeper story about that. So, in your preparation for the hunt, did you know you were going to be riding mules?
I had discussed with him how it would be, and it would either be riding or on mules, or it would be walking, and some truck work too. Yeah. So
what did you do to prepare yourself for riding a mule through the Book Cliff Mountains from New Jersey?
I did nothing. I probably should have. Maybe I should have done something, but I didn't do anything.
Isn't that crazy?
Before. I'm sorry.
Isn't it wild how? I mean, I have not ridden. I rode a little bit last year, just for a few, not very much, but I used to ride a lot. Yeah. And even now, just an hour or so of riding, man, it hurts. You when you ride all the time. Yeah. Then your muscles and your joints and everything get used to it and things like that. But just going in cold,
right,
like you did,
yeah,
you're in for some punishment.
Yeah. I've ridden before. I've done other hunts in Montana where I rode horseback into the mountains and all. So I'm familiar with riding. I'm comfortable riding.
Sure.
But it's certainly not something I do regularly. That's for sure.
Right.
And I felt it.
So what was your, did you run any lions? Did you chase any lions on your first hunt?
We did. We cut some tracks. We put the dogs on them. We ran them. but never laid eyes on them, never caught up to them before we either ran out of daylight or they made it where we couldn't go. So yeah, we ran some cats, just didn't have any luck.
And what was your experience with the houndsmen as far as the way they interacted on the first time? What were your initial reactions to the way the houndsmen interacted with their hounds? I guess we can start right there.
Well, I was impressed with the dogs. I mean, they're great, great dogs. I don't know that I took anything away from it with how he interacted with them in particular, but I enjoyed watching them and watching them go up the sides of those cliffs and,
the drive, the heart.
On top of this rock outcropping, I'm standing up there, where I'd be sitting down holding on for dear life, and they're just up there bouncing around from rock to rock, so
right.
It's impressive to watch. And I love the sound of the hounds, bawling as they're, running around chasing them, but yeah, it was good.
I don't know how you could get any more romantic than sitting on this romantic vision of chasing a lion than sitting out there on a mule and listening to the hounds echoing through the Book Cliff Mountains.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's a beautiful area too. The country's beautiful too, so it was good.
So we got the first one wrapped up, 5 days, saddle sore, a lot of hound barking, no lion. Yeah,
pretty disappointed.
Yeah,
but and the JT was the guy that I was hunting with. His name was JT Robbins. He kept saying that that without snow on the ground, it's pretty tough to cut tracks and have success. The odds of success go down quite a bit. So I said when I came back the next year, I wanted to come earlier in the season and hopefully have some snow on the ground. So we set it up again. I went back again, and wasn't much snow on the ground. There was patchy snow here and there, but certainly not enough that we were, tracking cats in the snow. And basically the same results. This time it was a lot of riding in trucks and just staring at the ground out the window as you're riding along, hoping to cut tracks. And the results were similar. We ran some cats again, but just never really got, anything treed or got close enough to it to be successful. And I walked my rear end off on that one. We climbed down some serious cliffs to get, to keep trailing the dogs, and up some serious cliffs. It was a very, very physical hunt. And again, I came home sore and tired and pretty dejected. And I was feeling, at that point, I was feeling like I was letting my grandfather down somehow. I had built this up in my mind, that this is what I had to accomplish. And, I was failing, and that I'm the kind of person that doesn't sit well with me. So I was driving myself. I had to get this done. And so unbelievable to my wife, but I booked the third trip to go back the following year. And the third year, was the charm. We had some snow on the ground. We had a lot of snow on the ground. We ended up hunting with snowmobiles that time. And it still took 4 days into that third trip. So we had spent, 13 or 14 full days of hunting mountain lions with dogs, and to finally be successful. And so it changed my whole impression of hunting with dogs. My ideal preconceived notion was that you turn these dogs loose out of the truck, and they run and put a cat up in a tree, and you walk up and shoot it. And it's like nothing could be further from the truth. We worked our butts off.
You know what app I use on my phone more than any other app besides the podcast app to listen to this here podcast? I use onX. onX Maps is the most comprehensive mapping system for hunters on the market today. I use it all the time. When I was in New Mexico, I was looking at 40,000 acres of ranch that I needed to learn. I flip open onX and just start studying the map. When I'm riding trails, I put the tracking app on. It helps me get around in strange country. I could mark water sources, food sources, bear sign, just all kinds of options within onX. You need to check out onX Maps by going to houndsmanxp.com, click on the link on our sponsor page. You'll go right to onX Maps, and when you check out, enter the code HXP20 and you will get 20% off of your order. Know where you stand with onX. The Houndsman XP Podcast only endorses products that we would use ourselves, and I do use Elite Nutrition supplements. Elite Nutrition offers supplements for your horses, your mules, your dogs, and even you. These all-natural products work with your dog's natural immune system and its normal, natural body function, not to treat symptoms, but to fix problems. Stop pumping pharmaceutical toxins into yourself or your dogs and start using these all-natural products that work with the perfect system that God gave you. Go to tryelitenutrition.com and check out their products for wound care, prebiotic, probiotic, puppy stuff. It's all there. Parasite control. If you expect extreme performance, you need Elite Nutrition. Was it a deal where, how far back were you when you finally got to the tree and killed the lion?
That's the funny part of it. We were on snowmobiles, so we were riding and got around the back of this canyon. And then the dogs we cut the track, the dogs went out and they went down into the canyon and disappeared. And, we kept making our way around the ridge to try to get to an area where we could get down to where they went. Finally did that, made our way down. Now, and it's deep snow, but, your adrenaline's pumping and you don't even realize that you're trekking through all this snow going down into the canyon. And I don't know, I was probably back in a half a mile or so, maybe. And the cat was treed. And no sooner did I walk up to the tree to look up at the cat, it jumped and went down the bottom, all the way down the bottom of the canyon and then up the other side. And it's like the guy, JT, looked at me and said, okay, let's go. We got to go after him again. And so down we go all the way to the bottom and then up the other side about halfway. And the dogs had it treed again. And, but it was really edgy. He didn't want to take a lot of time and take a chance on it jumping again. So we didn't mess around for very long. But I remember circling around the tree trying to get a clear shot at its vitals. And I ended up at eye level with it. And it was only, I don't know, maybe 20 feet away from me at eye level, snarling at me. And it's an intimidating animal. Yeah. It's still scary to be at that eye level with it like that, even when you're holding a rifle. Yeah. So
and 15 or 20 feet, you're within his range at that point. If he decides to come out of there, he can make that jump to you. Yeah. And was it kind of an awestruck moment where you finally see this lion, knowing that you've worked 14 days and now you're eye to eye? Explain that feeling you had at that point. I got to say, it was just like pure joy, to be finally it's happening. It's a relief, and it's success. You're experiencing success, something that you've worked your rear end off for, and you're finally succeeded in accomplishing it. But honestly, I think the killing of the lion is a little anticlimactic. It's everything that leads up to it. That's the joy of that hunt. The actual kill is what it is. You killed it, but the whole process of leading up to it and treeing it is what makes that a great hunt, and that I'd love to do again. Yeah. So, but to answer your question, so we killed the cat, fell down out of the tree, didn't go far. By the time we skinned it out, cut the meat off of it, packed it, and started walking out, we were walking out just by the light of our headlamps. It was dark out, and that's when I realized how far back into the mountains we had gone. Between the snowmobile ride, the hike down, and then the hike further down, and then the hike up, it took hours to walk back out. And the snow, the drifts in the mountains, the snow at times was up to my thighs. So it was grueling getting out of there. Sure.
And the funny, I'm going to go on a little further. The funny thing.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
All right. The funny thing that happened at the end of that was we ran these dogs in like stages. so that there was more dogs than we had sleds behind the snowmobiles to take the dogs back out. And it was too far for them to be able to run all the way back to the trucks. So we loaded what we could in the sleds, the boxes that they pulled behind the snowmobiles. And there was one dog left. And I'm sitting behind JT on the snowmobile, and I end up with this hound dog on my lap the whole way back. Hour and 45 minute ride on the back of the snowmobile, holding on to this hound dog as we're riding in the pitch black, Utah darkness coming out of there. It was awesome.
You developed your own special relationship with hounds.
I did. I did. Yeah. He was a good boy too.
What was that hound's name?
I couldn't tell you.
Oh.
I don't know if I was ever told.
Yeah. I didn't know if you were like sending him Christmas care packages or anything at this point. If you guys got that
good idea,
got that intimate with him or not.
So I ended up writing that article and putting it in the book, and it is undoubtedly my favorite chapter of the book.
What of all the hunting that you've done internationally? There's a couple things. How would you rate the lion hunt with hounds compared to, I know every hunt has its own values and its own, but for you to pick that hunt and dedicate a chapter of the book, it must have made an impact.
Oh, for sure. And a lot of it has to do with the tie to my grandfather and my father. But also I shot a beautiful cat. It's gorgeous. It's one of my favorite mounts in my trophy room. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. It's hard for me to say how I would rate it because every hunting trip is different. Everything. There's different things that I love about hopefully every trip. There've been a couple that I didn't really care for at all, but
right.
Save that for another podcast. But as far as it goes, it was a great trip. That's what I just like to say.
Yeah. The other thing I was going to ask you, how would you rate it as far as the physicality, the physical challenges of the hunt?
Yeah, it's right up there, right up there between all of the hiking that we did and the mule riding. Yeah, it's a very physical hunt. If in certain circumstances, I'm sure guys have had easier times of it than I did, but the way mine went down, it was very physical. Now I've done mountain goat hunts in Alaska, in Prince William Sound of Alaska. We're climbing a steep mountain. Right. That's pretty physical. I've done Dall sheep hunts in the Talkeetna Mountain. Same thing, very physical. But this ranked right up there as a difficult hunt. The Book Cliff Mountains are serious, and we worked our butts off.
Yeah. I don't know how many times I've been in booths at different conventions like SCI and listened to the outfitter tell their clients, it's like, if you come with us, you got to make sure you need to get on the Stairmaster now, and start getting prepared.
Yeah, I wish I had worked out a little bit better before that hunt. Yeah, I didn't prepare as well as I should have.
I find myself, I have to work out regularly here, just as good as I can. So when I do go west, we're going to be doing a lion study in the not too distant future. Not only the dogs have to be in shape, I've got to be in shape as well. Better shape than I am. You can't get there sitting in the chair watching, flipping through Netflix.
Right.
You got to dedicate that time. And so where can people find the book? If somebody's like, man, I want to read this book. I want to read it for sure.
They can reach out to me, send me an email. My email is huntnewland@gmail.com. I'll be happy to send out a copy to whoever would like it. It's on Amazon. You have to search for Following Footsteps and then put in you get a lot comes up in those search results if you just put Following Footsteps. But if you put the subtitle in, Thank You, Dad, for Making Me a Hunter, it'll narrow it down and you'll come right to the book.
What a great title. I found it pretty easily on Amazon just by Following Footsteps by Bob Newland.
There you go.
And it popped right up. And so there you go. You can find it that easy, folks. But, go ahead.
Some of my best reviews of my book came from non-hunters, which surprised me. There were a lot of people out there who replied back to me and said that they had no idea how much hunting did for conservation, and the humanitarian stuff that we did. And I got tremendous reviews from non-hunters. Hunters liked it too, but the non-hunters wrote the nicer reviews.
Well, I think we need it, media, positive media, however we can get it as hunters, for sure.
Right.
And something like this is, do I want to use the word palatable, or something when you put the humanitarian side in for, and I always compare everything to my aunt, and she's a great lady, but she's not a hunter. She names the squirrels that are on her feeder and things like that. But she always appreciates, she likes factual stuff. She doesn't like she's not, she doesn't fantasize about what hunting is. She knows what it is. Right. My dad was a hunter. Her dad was a hunter, my grandfather. And so she's very aware. And when she can pick up a book like that and find the intrinsic values, and it's a lot different than how we normally tell our stories just to other hunters. I think that's a valuable message to get out there.
Yeah. And I think the book is written by just an everyday person. I'm no Jim Shockey or Craig Boddington. There's nothing overly scientific in my writing. It's just real life experiences, and I think that people like that too.
I think that's valuable for sure. You put these people on a pedestal. It's like, well, yeah, Jim Shockey's going to write that about hunting because that's what he's done his whole life. That's how he makes his living. And then you get a guy that loves hunting and is passionate about it and is willing to take the time and the energy that doesn't hunt for a living, and gives his perspective on it. I think that's awesome, Bob.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. So you guys have got a banquet coming up. And what are the dates of your banquet?
March 8th and 9th.
Okay.
And it takes place at the Delta by Marriott in just outside of Allentown, Pennsylvania.
Okay. And where can people find tickets, or how do they get involved? If we've got people that are listening and from that area up there, it's like, man, I'm going to go check this out.
The website is LVSCI, Lehigh Valley Safari Club International, lvsci.org.
Okay.
And right on there, there's a tab up at the top, banquet. Click on the banquet, and registration is right there.
We will put that link in the show notes to this episode down below. So make sure you check out the show notes. You guys should always be checking out the show notes for our shows because we put all kinds of links and discounts and all kinds of stuff in there. So make sure you check it out. Right below the show notes, there will be a link to Lehigh Valley SCI chapter.
This year's banquet's pretty special. We have Tom Miranda coming, so he'll be there. He'll be there for both days of the event. There's no bigger name in archery hunting these days than Tom Miranda. And he's a very genuine, good person, down to earth, approachable. He'll spend hours there talking to you. He's a great guy. So he'll be there. We have about 120 auction items that'll go off on the live auction over the 2 days. There's dozens of Chinese auction and silent auction items. There's more raffles than you can count. Right. So there's a lot of opportunities to win some cool stuff, and there's some good hunts available for bidding on as well. Sure.
Yeah, make sure you check all that out, folks. Bob, you got anything you want to finish out the podcast with? Any messages to houndsmen out there?
Well, I will give credit to Jim Shockey for saying one thing. He says, if you're a hunter, you should be a member of SCI. Yeah, he says, well, how does he say it? If you're not a member of SCI, you should be. Something along those lines.
Right.
So, yeah. SCI is a great organization.
Yeah, Jim's been on this podcast. And
has he?
Yeah. We interviewed Jim. It was last year. We had a discussion about his new book, Call Me Hunter.
Yep.
We also talked about a lot of other issues and the culture of hunting and what hunting's meant to him throughout his whole life. it was a good discussion. So,
if you ever get a chance, you should visit his museum, at the Hand to Man Museum,
Vancouver Island.
My wife took me for my 60th birthday.
No kidding.
It was phenomenal. And fortunately, Jim was there when I was there, and place wasn't real busy that day. He stood there talking to me for over an hour, just very willing to stand and talk. Great guy.
Yeah. Yeah. He's been a great ambassador for hunting. That's for sure. His
has.
messaging is right, and he represents hunters very well.
Yes.
So,
agree.
Well, Bob, I appreciate you taking time out of your schedule. You're up there shoveling snow today and trying to get things done, and it's a work day and everything. So I truly appreciate you sharing your story and your insights on hunting. I hope there's a lot of people that aren't necessarily houndsmen that'll listen to this and get your perspectives on hunting. You can find Following Footsteps by Bob on Amazon. Like I said, just when you go on Amazon, just type in Following Footsteps by Bob Newland, and it pops right up for you. And appreciate it, man.
Hey, I appreciate you having me on. Thank you.
You never know who you're going to run into when you go to these conventions.
Well, I didn't expect to walk away invited on a podcast.
You should. I should have given you that warning when we first shook hands. All right, folks. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Houndsman XP Podcast. I really appreciate every one of you tuning in every week. And make sure you check out our show notes. Seriously, I mean, we've got links to our Patreon accounts, our sponsors. One of the things that we're pushing right now for CRWM and the mountain lion bobcat hunting ban in Colorado is our Join or Die series, and it's a hoodie and a sweatshirt. It's very well designed and good quality stuff, and we're donating all those profits to CRWM because we're serious about this fight too. And if it wasn't for great organizations like Safari Club International and the groundswell from all these private chapters, we wouldn't have a chance to win. So I appreciate the effort of all you hunters that are members of SCI and every other conservation organization that's in this fight. Secure the freedoms of hunting. Until next time, that's going to do it for this one. This is Fair Chase.